Bellavance-Lecompte. I am a design curator and an architect. I've been, let's say, operating in the field of crafts, art and design over the past 15 years in the region, mostly in the Middle East and North Africa. I co-founded back in the days the Car1 Gallery that had a base in Beirut in Lebanon. And before moving it to Athens, then I was involved in different projects in Siwa Oasis in Egypt, and also in Tunisia with Lamia Bousnina Gallery, where we had an exhibition last May that was the result of over a year and a half research and development of special commissions between craftsmen from all over the country and artists who brought a very special, let's say, know-how to every craft to enhance, let's say, their technique and explores also new directions in their practice. So today I was invited to moderate, obviously, to talk about the work of Louis that arrived to a second chapter of the first one we did with a new piece that was titled Hanon and the Land of Thirst, that is exhibited on the booth of Lamia Bousnina. And to contextualize, let's say, also, and to expand the conversation about, let's say, the Sahara in general as a canvas for creativity that can be seen in both, let's say, social perspective or in terms of culture or history, the way it has nurtured the work and inspiration of different artists and creatives all across the northern and southern part of Sahara. And Kwame, that is here with us tonight also, founded a gallery in Dubai that is specialized actually to promote also artists from the African continents. And we were interested especially to discuss also tonight a very impressive tapestry from Abdoulaye Konate that you can see also exhibited just here in the main sort of square at the center of the fair. And also there's a few pieces were exhibited at the gallery, and I believe you have at the moment also the very first solo exhibition of Konate actually in the UAE that is happening in Dubai actually at the gallery. So you are all invited to go visit obviously the exhibition. And I think it would be interesting to draw parallels today and a conversation between the work of obviously of Konate and Barthélemy in this case. Maybe we can start with you, Kwame, if you can have a few words about maybe the gallery, your program, and also the fantastic exhibition you have at the moment of Konate.
Thank you, Nico. Thank you, Louis, and thank you, Abu Dhabi Art. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm happy to be representing Konate, and I'll be speaking on his behalf. So please forgive me for any errors. Well, the topic of the discussion is the desert as a canvas or as an imaginary landscape. And in talking of Konate, you really learn that from his perspective, the desert is a painting or the materials, and he's the canvas. So Konate is a Malian artist. He's born in 1953, and he grew up in the desert, in a place called Bita Gongo, which is in the heart of Mali, and right beside a lake called Lake Fagoubin. And he talks about how he grew up in the 60s, how he would often play during the sandstorms, and how he would, when a sandstorm comes, he would have to put his head between his knees, him and his friends, and wait until time passes. And after the sandstorm comes and goes, they'll all gather by the lakeside, and they'll play with these shards and pots. And as they were children, they didn't really know what they were playing with. But many years later, he became the director of the Civilization Museum in Mali, and he realized that the very pots that he was playing with in the desert as a child were actually evidence of ancient civilizations in the region. And if you look at his work, you see that he really carries the tradition forward. So Mali is known for textiles on the continent. It's like almost the epitomization of craftsmanship. I would have more images, but I'll show you. They've been doing textiles for centuries. So before Konate was even an individual, we like to say that he was an artist because he comes from a lineage of artists. But how you see where the desert influences him is how he expands his tradition and he personalizes it. So we can go to the next slide. Maybe two after. This one's fine. So this particular work is in his current exhibition at the gallery. The exhibition is called Sambajo, and it's inspired by Ali Farka Toure's debut album from 1979, which is talking about a father's plea to his child to embrace the earth, the whole idea that we should be conversant with where we're from and the ground in which beholds us. And here you can see there's an impact of layering. In Konate's works, even though he's always working with fabric, which is naturally 3D, he always layers the works. And he talks about how this is inspired by the forms in the sand, especially from where he grew up in, and how light affects, or light like has this impact of making it looks like the sand is laying on top of each other. And he wants his works to have that same impact. And he also talks about the importance of sunrise and sunset, especially when you're living in a place where time, you can't count time, but you can only see time because of night and day. So almost all his works, you'll see that there's a darkness at the top and light at the bottom. This whole idea that sunsets and sunrises. And throughout his work, he's always been inspired by where he's from, the desert, and also the tradition which holds him in Mali. So yeah. So this work is Tunis, and this work is actually inspired by Tunisia. So even though all his works always have layering, he likes to incorporate different motifs into his works, which are inspired by the places he's making. So the previous work was inspired by Tombouctou, and this one's inspired by Tunisia, which Louis can get further into, because I know Louis works with artisans in Tunisia.
Yeah, maybe we can pass to Louis. Maybe we can also do a back and forth and come back a bit later to continue to discuss the work of Konate. So Louis, maybe I will let you talk about, maybe it would be good to have a bit more of understanding of your parcours and
Yes.
how you got into this idea of integrating crafts inside your practice, and maybe to talk about also a few of your projects.
Thank you so much for attending this panel, and thank you Abu Dhabi Art for this opportunity. I'll introduce myself first. I'm Louis Barthélemy. I'm a French artist based for the past 10 years between Morocco, Egypt, and Paris. My background is fashion. I was trained at St. Martin's in London, but a few years after practicing in the fashion industry, I realized my heart was somewhere else, and I wanted to engage closer with makers, masters, and craft communities in regions of the world I'm drawn to. Hence my move to North Africa and Marrakesh specifically 10 years ago. Over years I've been traveling a lot and meeting collectives of artisans, which I really see as guardians, of precious craft. They're almost cultural anchors, in society. And a few years ago, I traveled to Tunisia for the first time. It was almost like a layover on my way, to Egypt from Morocco. And I ended up extending this stay because I was luckily met an artisan in a coastal city called Maadia, known for the silk weaving and gold embroidery in Tunisia. And together we started sampling some embroidery stitches. We took traditional stitches, which usually would ornate garments or trousseaux, nuptial trousseaux, and we've been experimenting by introducing new materials, usually not associated to those stitches, such as agave, raffia, metal thread, plastic, to modernize those techniques. Because what I've noticed in a country also like Tunisia, where there has been numerous political failures, although there's a deeply rich heritage, those crafts are no longer surviving because of globalization. And I think sometimes those crafts do not resonate with today's world because they don't necessarily address contemporary questions, or they don't dialogue with our time. So my aim with Najib, Zahra, his sister, and this collective of women embroiderers was to try to revive those crafts and make sure they have an echo with our time and our societies. So we initiated some of the first tapestries, which were exhibited in Doha during the biennial earlier this year. And then Lamia, Bousnina and Nicolas invited me to contribute to Carthagism exhibition, which opened in May, last May in Tunis. And this time I really wanted to narrate a story that really speaks about what's going on today in Tunisia. We've been witnessing a lot of young intellectuals and graduates and entrepreneurs fleeing the country. And I wanted to address this reality in a narrative, in a compelling narrative. So we're showing two pieces here in Abu Dhabi. The first one is called Hanan, in the Land of Thirst, which is a scene that unfolds in the desert. It was very much inspired by this movie by Italian filmmaker called Matteo Garrone, released in 2023, about sub-Saharan migrants from Dakar crossing the Sahara to reach the Tunisian shores to embark on boats on their way to Europe, hoping for better lives. And so what this tapestry shown here at the booth depicts Hanan, who was a Carthaginian explorator, 6th century BC, from Carthage, who was very drawn to Africa and very drawn to West Africa, actually. He had mapped out the west of the continent and tying strong connections with tribes, from Mauritania all the way down to Cameroon. So I wanted to transpose a glorious Carthaginois Tunisian past with today's Tunisia's political and societal struggles, and to raise certain questions and to highlight as well the courage and the bravery of those communities of young African crossing, the Sahara through this hardship and this unknown, carrying with them few belongings, phone, the only anchors they may have, and reaching the coast. And then the second piece, which is also shown here in hues of blues and greens, shows a second chapter, which is a crossing, and there's a lot of references to 18th century French painting, such as Géricault and Jérôme. So there are very much mosaics almost of traditional stitches, but using quite unexpected material and depicting a very contemporary story.
Great. So I think what is very interesting here, if we draw a parallel also between your work, Louis, and the one of Konate, is somehow you both artists explore sort of social background and different realities, actually from north and south of the Sahara somehow, and in a more abstract and figurative way somehow, but there are some points who are quite interesting in terms of details. If we look at some of the details who are shown here, but also in the work of Konate, who brings the idea of crafts, which is something very important in both practices somehow, in the way the embroideries is being done to insert different symbols in both works. I don't know, Kwame, if you want to comment further, maybe this aspect of integration of crafts within the work of Konate, and maybe also it would be very interesting to learn a bit more about the program also of the gallery, about let's say this sub-Saharan part of the Sahara also, and how the artists also are mostly involved in different thematics, social thematics linked to the environment, also the exchanges that happen along the history of migration and colonization, and also the different routes of trade that happen across the Sahara and so on. And so I'll let you continue.
Perfect. I think I'll begin with the gallery and then I'll go into Konate's work. So Efie Gallery is a family gallery. It's myself, my brother, my mother, and we're based out of Dubai. And even though we're based out of Dubai, we're specialized in the works of African artists, both in the continent and from the diaspora. It happened with an exhibition, and then, to cut a long story short, we actually opened a permanent gallery. But for us, the most important thing was the narrative, and what is the African art narrative. So as a family, we live between Ghana, where we're from, Dubai, and London. And we were opening a gallery for which of these three places do we open the first gallery in. And in Ghana, we have libraries which are dedicated to African literature. So we thought in terms of creativity, we kind of have that region settled. So now it's between Ghana and Dubai, or Accra and Dubai. I mean London and Dubai, sorry. So first we analyzed London. And London, of course, it has its rich art world history. But we thought when it comes to the conversation around African art, at first, African art was seen as subpar, where it was seen as craftsmanship or just craftsmanship. And it was seen as like images of wildlife or images of masks. And it wasn't seen as anything that can be at a high level, the level in which it should be appreciated at. And then recently there's been this sudden surge of everyone's looking for African art, and everyone's thinking, oh, we need to diversify our collections, we need African art. And in this rush for diversification, there's been like narratives which have been bound to artists' works because it was being presented in the West, where no matter what an African artist creates, they're saying that this work is talking about colonization. And African artists can literally just talk about a blank piece of paper, and the curator would say that this work is talking about colonization or slave trade. And whilst these are heavily important topics which should be discussed, we thought that it kind of stifles creativity because there's other important topics, and it's not the only topic. And when you present it as it's the only topic, you lose out on a lot of conversation, a lot of meaning, a lot of knowledge. So we thought, okay, why don't we look at the Dubai scene? And of course, the Dubai scene, in relation to the Western scene, it was quite Nazian. And this presented us with almost a brownfield where, as opposed to this need for deconstructing the narrative in the West, you're presented with this unique opportunity to construct a narrative. And this leads to a new issue where, I mean, it's very easy to diagnose a problem, but what is the solution? You know, now you've been given the canvas, what do you want to paint? So first we tried to define what is African art. And naturally you draw blanks. So we thought, okay, why don't we open the question, what is art? Like, when does the object become an artwork? And of course, in the world of conceptual art, this is also can't be answered. Like, when does sound become music? We can't answer this. So we thought, why don't we lean into this unknown? So as a gallery, we wanted to almost extend the barriers where, to the extent of which someone can come to our gallery 1 month and absolutely detest the show we have. And like, they'll say, this is not art, this is horrible. And we want to embrace this. And the next month they can come and they will love the show. And in that moment they'll realize they can't say whether they love or they hate African art, and then they can't say what is African art. So on our program we have artists, all age ranges, all art school levels. Some have never been to school, some who are masters, some who are a lot of established artists, a lot of emerging artists. And the whole idea is basically stretching the idea. When we relate to the work of Konate is a textile-based artist, a sculptor, but his way of sculpting is different. He refers to himself as a painter, even though he doesn't paint. And he says that he uses the natural dyes of the textiles as his paint, as his source of creativity. And while he also channels his tradition, his heritage, as I mentioned previously with Mali being masters of textiles, he wants to bring it into his own personnel. And he refers to himself as a journeyman. So as we see the work outside, which is called Tunisia, even though he's not from Tunisia, he would explore the country, explore the symbols, the motifs which are present in their work, and then put them in the work and almost draw his perception of what this place is, even though he's only visited. Some places he's never even visited. But he wants to really almost have like a Malian perspective on these places that he's traveling to and on these places that he's depicting. So his whole idea is almost you can channel your tradition, you can channel your heritage, and you can also expand it by going to visit in different places. But you don't have to lose yourself. If you're drawing Tunisia, you don't have to become Tunisian. You can have a perspective, and you can have and Africans are able to have that perspective going outward, because everyone's always talking about the Western gaze, but really he's focused on his own gaze, the African gaze.
Great, thank you. And I think you brought interesting points when we talk about, let's say, definition of what is art and being a Western perspective about it. I had the chance earlier this year also to curate a project in Rwanda with multidisciplinary artists, designers, I mean, it depends on what box you want to put them somehow, and self-taught artists also. It was very interesting because I was at first with maybe a more Western, let's say, point of view. You were asking them, oh, are you an artist, a designer, or are you a fashion designer maybe? And I must say most of the time they're going, no, we are creative. And so one day I can wake up and I want to do a garment, or the other day I want to paint something. And I thought it was so interesting to say that they don't want to be put in a specific box. For them, creativity is limitless, and they can do so many different things. And I think this also a bit applies to you also, Louis, somehow, you know, in a way, because you're also bridging different practices somehow, and also inspiration, also coming from fashion to design and art and illustration. So it's interesting if you can expand a bit on this.
Absolutely. I feel in my practice I've been navigating from medium to mediums, and I keep exploring new ones, keep meeting new craft masters with whom I have the desire to develop things. I'm constantly on the lookout, you know. So I've been constantly fighting against these molds, you know. I think ever since I've been a child. And it's this freedom that I really cherish and cultivate, and perhaps, you know, the countries where I've based myself have allowed me this freedom. For instance, when I was in Siwa during COVID, I spent 5 continuous months in the oasis, and I ended up exploring, you know, mediums I had never delved into, such as stone carving, ceramics as well, experimenting with different types of glaze and salt. I mean, just being in an environment that allows made me want to, you know, delve into many different practices. And I think this is the most beautiful thing being an artist, is to have this free frame spirit. And if this is being boxed, I think the whole point is lost, you see. So I do agree with this approach and philosophy. It doesn't have to be so institutionalized and defined.
And talking about your, let's say, circum-Saharan explorations, I believe you have also a project, I don't know if you can talk a little about it, in Benin, that you're working on at the moment.
Yeah, earlier this year I was traveling to Benin. Again, I mean, the first journey to Benin was purely out of curiosity, but I had done some extensive research in the past, having done a solo show in Dakar at the Efie Museum. I was acquainted to the Dahomey Kingdom and its stunning heritage, including some incredible Dahomey appliqué tapestries, which I bridged with appliqué technique in Egypt. But nevertheless, like I was drawn to this heritage and the story behind it. So, traveling to Benin, I was able to visit former royal palaces of the Dahomey Kingdom, and in those buildings, which are now being restored with the help of UNESCO, I met artisans. There were weavers, embroiderers, people working with the wax and iron carving. And having conversations with them and having stayed in touch with them, you know, ever since, I've been reflecting about, you know, a story that we can weave together. It's important for me every time I collaborate with an artisan from a specific region to develop an artwork and a project that really dialogues with their heritage, their environment, and create bridges that are relevant for both ends, you see. And we've been working on this series of tapestries that talk about restitution. Benin is going through an interesting chapter of its history with President Talon. A lot of heritage is being restituted from Germany and from France, and this has sparked a real sort of collective momentum of Beninese artists reappropriating their heritage and translating it through a contemporary prism. So witnessing this, but also engaging with those creatives in Benin has been extremely enlightening for me. So this series is now being produced, and there'll be multiple trips to Benin in the coming year to follow up on production and potentially, you know, encore this project within an institution or a foundation. This is being sort of discussed at the moment.
Okay. Well, I think Benin has a very interesting, definitely cultural scene which is evolving, and I don't know, Kwame, if like you're a bit familiar with the Benin artistic scene somehow, but I must say the central part of West Africa is having a sort of highlight at the moment from a global perspective, especially Ghana obviously is like booming with like the multiplication of artist residencies were happening in different parts of obviously the capital in Accra, in Kumasi as well, but also you have an amazing example in the north with Ibrahim Mahama. I don't know if you want to give us a bit like also I would say to link it still also with like this idea what we say, the culture in these central countries of West Africa are very interesting because they combine both the culture of the Sahel and the coast somehow, which has a very hybrid culture in terms of influences and in terms of, you see, that you can see then in the work of the various artists who are practicing there.
Yeah, there has been a recent surgence of like institutions which have focus on African art, but the reason there was a deficit of institutions previously is because, like, as Ghanaians, as Africans, we are creative. Like, the idea of going to a room just to see art, it doesn't really make sense to us because everything we do is art. It's not, we don't have to go to a place to see art. It's who we are. But now, through globalization and through conversation with other neighboring countries and neighboring continents, now we're seeing the rise of institutions such as artist residencies. You mentioned Ibrahim Mahama, even Amarko Boafo. Ellen actually expanded his studio to have a residency space. Kwesi Botre, Ishak Ismail, and this is just Ghana. And then you also have artists like Yinka Shonabare opening gas studios in Nigeria. There's a huge influx of institutions, but it's only a recent thing, and it doesn't really make sense. It doesn't really make sense to like a local kid in Ghana to go to a museum or to see these places, because that's who we are. We don't have to go to see it, if that makes any sense. But it's good to see it though, nonetheless.
Great. And do you feel that, I think the mentoring, what is very interesting, I was like very, let's say, impressed by how, let's say, the artists who had the earlier career and had a sort of international success from Ghana, they circled back to the community through these residencies to nurture the work of younger artists from the region, to help them to understand, let's say, how to develop their practice and give them a chance for production somehow, and the means and the studios. And I think this is a very interesting example of how, let's say, instead of like maybe a government or any other institutions or more public, it's the artists who are, let's say, thinking of the future of the nation somehow in terms of artistic practice.
There's a lot of artist-led institutions, and I guess art is somewhat of a luxury. So a lot of our places are more developing. So for there to be budget put aside for art projects, even though in the art world it makes a lot of sense, in the real world it doesn't make much sense. So that's why there has to be a lot of artist-led institutions, because only artists can think like artists, especially in these areas. But it's a beautiful influx that we're seeing, definitely.
And in the next few months or next year, do you plan, are there new, let's say, solo exhibitions of artists from the region that you will present in the UAE?
Definitely. We just signed an Afro-Cuban artist called Maria Magdalena Campos Pons. She's currently got a museum show at the Getty, which is going to travel to I believe Brooklyn Museum. She's a phenomenal artist, and she'll have a solo in April. We have a few group exhibitions. We have a lot of museum shows coming up, which I don't know if I'm allowed to speak about, but we're excited nonetheless. So it should be a good year, inshallah.
Okay, great. And what about Konate? Does he has any exhibition in the pipe?
Konate will be in the upcoming Louvre Abu Dhabi show in January, Africa Kings and Queens show, which should be another huge work, which we're excited for. He's also been acquired by a few international major museums, which I don't know how much I can speak about, but yeah, he's having a great year too. Yeah.
Okay, great. And what about you, Louis? What are your future projects?
Well, I'm really pleased to know that Abdoulaye Konate will be part of this exhibition, Queens and Kings of Africa, because I also be showing 3 tapestries there. It's actually a triptych that tells the story of it's also a crossing of the Sahara. It's a pilgrimage of Mansa Musa from Timbuktu to Mecca. So I guess
another coincidence
crossing,
between your work and one of Konate, which is quite exceptional.
Yeah, Abdoulaye Konate has been a figure of the arts in which I dearly admire, and I had the chance to meet him several times in Dakar and in Marrakesh. And he's always been given a lot of very insightful information and advice. He's very generous in the way he shares his opinion with so much intelligence and sensitivity. So I'm looking forward to meeting him again in UAE. Other coming shows. Well, now my brain freezes, but yeah, the one coming up is the Louvre next January.
And maybe the Biennale in September?
Oh, of course, and Bukhara. Thank you for reminding me. Yeah, I was just coming back from Uzbekistan, working on the coming Bukhara biennial, which will be the first in Central Asia, opening in September. So this is going to be a quite intensive year of production and developments with craft masters in a region I only was acquainted to last summer, so I'm curious about this chapter. So it's I've been diversifying the productions and developments across the world, and from West Africa to Egypt, Middle East, and now Central Asia. So busy.
And maybe we could close with a note or remarks about Dakar, since you mentioned Dakar. I think it's also a place where you both met Konate in a way during the Biennale of Dakar, which has recently opened like a few weeks ago. I don't know if did one of you had a chance to go or
no, unfortunately I think it changed dates a few times. I missed. Yeah, but that's where we actually met. Dakar is one of the best biennales. I've been to quite a few. I won't say all of them because I know there's many, but Dakar is one of the strongest, and that's where we actually met as a family. We met Konate for the first time, and we've come full circle. Now we represent him. So yeah, it's a beautiful place to go to. Anywhere in Africa you should go to, and if you want to go somewhere, please let me know. I'll take you hand in hand.
And you've been during the Biennale in Dakar, or you were another?
Yes. I mean, Dakar is a city I go regularly to. I love it. Even a corpus of works of tapestries were really celebrating Senegalese wrestling craft or heritage. And I've had a show there, so I do attend the biennials usually in Dakar because of the political changes and the dates being postponed multiple times. I decided not to go this year, but surely I'll be heading to the city soon because it's extremely dynamic, and I feel a bit as you said earlier on, and I found it really poetic, but not just poetic because it's quite true. There's a resourcefulness and a creativity and an artistry in the mundane daily life, which you get to witness in Dakar, especially in the Medina and in Soumbédoune, which is quite mind-blowing, just to see even a garage worker making, art installation completely unconsciously in such a genuine, pure way. This is so graceful, and Dakar really provides this show, So I think the biennial is every single moment. It's happening regardless of an official biennial. It's just out there, and I love Dakar for that.
Well, from Dakar to Abu Dhabi, I think we went through different spaces, deserts, and let's say latitudes of inspiration, which was great. Well, thank you both,
Thank you so
Louis
much.
and Kwame, for joining us today in Abu Dhabi at Art Abu Dhabi for this conversation. And I don't know if any of you have any question you would like to ask about to Louis or Kwame about the work of Konate. No? Okay, good. So I guess have a good evening, everyone,
you.
and
Thank you so much.
hope to see you soon. And
Thank you.
please do go see both of the presentations of Lamia Bousnina Gallery and also Efie Gallery if you want to see live the incredible work that has been done by both artists. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.